Imhotep created an extensive maze of dead ends and false doors to lead grave robbers away from the great riches and the one object that caused the entire pyramid complex to be built, the burial chamber of the pharaoh.
This is the final resting place of the pharaoh Djoser of the Third Dynasty. Here there's a shaft that goes down for 90 feet, leading to a small granite burial chamber, which was closed by a granite plug weighing 3.5 tons. Inside this chamber lay the sarcophagus, and inside the sarcophagus was a wooden coffin, which contained the mummy of the pharaoh Djoser.
It's here, at the bottom of Djoser's tomb shaft, where Imhotep the architect and Imhotep the doctor converge. As the king's vizier, Imhotep would have been in charge of building the burial shaft, and as high priest, he would have supervised Djoser's mummification. It's through the perfection of mummification that Imhotep would have gained an extraordinary knowledge of the workings of the human body. But when archaeologists entered Djoser's tomb in 1934, all they found of the pharaoh were his torso, right arm, and left foot.
If you look at the mummy, or the bits rather that are preserved, you can see the foot is beautifully preserved. It consists of linen bandages wrapped around the foot, and these are done in such great detail that you can see the toenails and indeed all the tendons of the foot. Now, this is very typical of Third Dynasty mummification, so clearly this must be a portion of the body of the pharaoh Djoser.
200 years after Djoser's death, the process of mummification was nearly perfected, exemplified by this beautifully preserved 4,000-year-old mummy of Nefer. Not only is the body wrapped and the linen sculpted, but a new technique has been introduced: evisceration, the surgical removal of the body's internal organs. If it was Imhotep who developed these techniques, then his mummy should be as well preserved as Nefer's.
Now, if we find Imhotep, we can expect that his body will be modeled, and presumably his face and details of his physique would be painted or modeled on the bandages. So we would indeed have a very good idea as to what he looked like in his life, or what he thought his ideal self should look like for the afterlife.
Mummification had a great influence on Egyptian medical practices. By supervising the embalmer's work, Imhotep would have gained extensive knowledge about the position of internal organs and human anatomy. He may have applied what he learned from preserving the dead to healing the living. A few miles from the Step Pyramid at the Giza Pyramids, scientists recently discovered archaeological evidence that Imhotep may have had the perfect living laboratory for practicing medicine. Dr. Zahi Hawass, one of Egypt's foremost archaeologists, made a spectacular find near the Great Pyramid at Giza in 1990. Hawass unearthed the complex where the workers who built the Great Pyramids were housed and buried. Hawass's excavation of the workers' village and cemetery is shedding new light on how the pyramids were built and changing old ideas about how the workers lived and died.
From each skeleton there is a story of the past, a story of those Egyptians who created and made this wonderful structure.
Hawass exhumed the corpses of 20 workers and sent the skeletons to a nearby lab where the bones were examined and x-rayed. As one might expect, the x-rays revealed that many of the workers had suffered injuries. The big surprise was that many of those injuries had been treated with very effective medical procedures. There is evidence of broken arms healing after being set in splints. The end of this leg bone is well healed, proof that the worker received good care and lived for years after the surgical amputation of his lower leg. One set of X-rays and bones reveals evidence of the first known brain surgery in history.
This skull is for a man that's suffering from a cancer, which sends metastasis to the bone, and can see it in this lesion. And there are evidence that they may try to make some surgical operation that appears from this chiseling effect on the bone outside.
In 2500 BCE, Egyptian doctors chiseled a hole in this skull to relieve the pressure caused by the patient's brain tumor. Dr. Hawass argues not only is this a testimony to ancient Egyptian medical practices, but it may be additional evidence that the pyramids were not built by slaves. The traditional theory is that 100,000 slaves labored for 40 years to build each of the Great Pyramids. But Hawass has found documents in the workers' village that proves the workers were paid. The documents and the workers' bones lead Hawass to conclude that each pyramid was built in about 20 years by 20,000 Egyptian workers. The workers were motivated by nationalism and had the benefit of emergency medical treatment.
One important evidence also that the workmen were not slaves is the examination of the bones. If they were slaves, they would never do a brain surgery.
As the builder of the first pyramid, Imhotep may have treated injuries suffered by workers and presided over the world's first trauma center. Hippocrates, the Greek who was recognized as the father of modern medicine, lived in the 4th century BCE. But there is evidence that Imhotep, 2,000 years before Hippocrates, was practicing modern medical techniques. Dr. Hamdi El-Rafey, a physician and professor of ancient Egyptian medicine at the American University in Cairo, believes Imhotep may have authored the world's first medical treatise. Here, in a Cairo marketplace, Dr. Hamdi is using an ancient Egyptian manuscript to search for ingredients Imhotep may have prescribed. Ancient Egyptian medicine contained large doses of magic, but many of the treatments were scientifically valid and effective. Chief among them was the widespread use of honey as an ingredient in the dressing used to treat wounds.
Honey is an absolutely marvelous ingredient because honey is bactericidal and bacteriostatic, which means that bacteria cannot grow and are killed by honey. So you can imagine the effect of that on wounds. Put honey on any wound today, and I can guarantee it will not become infected. Honey kills bacteria.
Dr. Hamdi discovered the healing power of honey in an ancient Egyptian medical treatise that may be based on Imhotep's writings. The Edmund Smith Papyrus, named after its first owner, is the oldest and most important medical papyrus ever found. Dating from 1550 BCE, the document lists 48 traumatic injury cases and their treatments. The world's first known use of sutures to close wounds, moldy bread to cure infection, and raw meat to stop bleeding. The papyrus begins with injuries to the head and then works its way down the body. The same organizational structure used by Gray's Anatomy today.
The Edwin Smith papyrus is a very scientific papyrus in the sense that it presents a case as we would present it today to our medical students. It has a title, what to do about it, how to diagnose it, how to treat it, and how to do a follow-up.
The Edwin Smith papyrus predates Hippocrates by over 1,000 years. And based on the archaic language in the papyrus, Dr. Hamdi suspects that the medical treatments were passed down from even older documents that could be buried with Imhotep.
In the event that we do find the tomb of Imhotep, it would be a fascinating find, surpassing that of Tutankhamun, provided it was found intact. Because we expect to find medical texts way beyond the texts that we have now. Again, we expect to find medical instruments that Imhotep used in his practice. So this would be a find unsurpassed like any in history.
Some scholars speculate that if Imhotep's tomb and the ability to read Egyptian hieroglyphs had not been lost, doctors today would swear an Imhotepic oath instead of the Hippocratic oath. Finding Imhotep's tomb would elevate Imhotep to his rightful place in history as the father of modern medicine. The search for his tomb exploded in 1922 when British archaeologist Howard Carter found another tomb, that of a little-known New Kingdom pharaoh, a boy king named Tutankhamun. Filled with a dazzling array of gold and jewels, King Tut's tomb, the only pharaoh's tomb ever found intact, renewed hopes that Imhotep's tomb might also rest unplundered, filled with treasures and priceless clues about the dawn of Egyptian civilization.